This is the story of how Audi engineers invented the technology that would eventually cost their parent company $37 billion. How internal emails prove executives knew they were breaking the law for over a decade. And how the former CEO was convicted in 2023 for allowing the fraud to continue even after the world found out. Anyone following Audi lately knows the brand is struggling, with profits dropping 45% in the first half of 2025, and the CEO publicly calling it the company's lowest point. A factory has closed, 7,500 job cuts have been announced, and the brand has fallen firmly into third place behind BMW and Mercedes. What most people don't realize is that the seeds of this collapse were planted back in 1999 when Audi engineers wrote the original code for what would become the most expensive automotive fraud in history. And we have the emails to prove they knew exactly what they were doing. The invention, 1999 to 2008. Contrary to what you might think, Dieselgate didn't start at Volkswagen. Audi is where the whole thing began. Back in 1999, engineers in Ingolstadt, Germany, developed something called the Acoustic Function, a piece of software designed to solve a simple problem. Diesel engines make a harsh clattering noise at idle, and Audi's solution involved a technology called pilot injection that smoothed out that sound. What happened next is where things went wrong, because this noise reduction increased nitrogen oxide emissions beyond legal limits. The software they wrote could detect when a car was being tested on a dynamometer, and it would automatically deactivate the noise reduction mode during the test. Once the test ended, the car went back to its normal, more polluting operation on the road. This was the original defeat device, and Audi invented it. Several Audi engineers later transferred to Volkswagen and brought this methodology with them. And that's when Volkswagen adapted it in 2006, while even using Audi's internal code name Acoustic Condition in their correspondence. The really damning evidence comes from internal communications that surfaced during investigations. A 2003 email circulated by an Audi software developer contained a parody of Goethe's famous poem, The Earl King, and buried in it was a line that would later become evidence in federal court: "CARB won't notice." CARB is the California Air Resources Board, the very agency that would eventually catch them. By January 2008, Audi engineers had become explicit in their emails, with one diesel development engineer writing to colleagues, "We won't make it without a few dirty tricks." That same year, engineers formally warned the head of diesel development, Richard Bauder, that Audi had to cheat to pass US emissions tests. Bauder proceeded anyway, according to the Department of Justice indictment. And here's the detail that really gets me. The reason Audi didn't simply install larger AdBlue tanks, which was the straightforward engineering solution that would have actually cleaned up the emissions, came down to vanity. Larger tanks would have reduced trunk space and interfered with the premium audio system placement. They chose fraud over a slightly smaller trunk. One internal email from 2008 stated that requiring American customers to refill the urea tank themselves would be, quote, "a disaster for the entire clean diesel strategy in North America." So instead of redesigning the car, they redesigned the truth. The warnings that were ignored. You might wonder whether anyone tried to stop this, and the answer is yes. Multiple people did, and they were overruled every time. The DOJ indictment states it clearly. The conspirators followed this illegal plan, despite numerous objections from colleagues in Audi, who urged officials to avoid the plan because it would violate current regulatory and certification requirements. And here's where it gets worse. Robert Bosch, the German supplier that provided the engine management software, explicitly warned Volkswagen in 2007 that using defeat device software in production vehicles would be illegal. Bosch delivered 11 million units anyway, and they were later fined 90 million euros in Germany, while paying $327 million in US settlements. A 2006 PowerPoint presentation detailed defeat device use, and executives were aware of its contents. Investigators found they repeatedly rejected calls to stop using the illegal software. Giovanni Pomio, who led Audi's diesel emissions team, later claimed that top Audi managers were informed as early as 2006 that current vehicles could not legally meet US and European emission standards because the AdBlue tank capacity was insufficient. Martin Winterkorn had served as Audi's CEO from 2002 to 2007 before moving up to become CEO of the entire Volkswagen Group, and he also served as chairman of the Audi board during this period. The man at the top of both organizations during the critical years when this fraud was being developed and deployed had connections running through every level of the scheme. The cover-up. The story gets darker from here. Late in 2013, an Audi engineer sent a presentation about the defeat device to senior management, and according to court documents, the engineer advised every recipient to delete the email and attachment after downloading it. Oliver Schmidt, Volkswagen's US liaison to regulators, saw the presentation and responded with an email saying, "It would be good if you deleted us from the cover page. If such a paper somehow falls into the hands of the authorities, Volkswagen can get into considerable difficulties." $70,000. That's what the entire study cost that brought down a $37 billion fraud. In May 2014, the International Council on Clean Transportation published findings from a study they'd commissioned from West Virginia University, where researchers tested a VW Jetta, a VW Passat, and a BMW X5 using portable emissions equipment on California roads. The BMW passed. The Volkswagens emitted 15 to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxides. The findings were reported to CARB and the EPA. That May, Martin Winterkorn received a memo about the study showing emissions 15 to 35 times higher than allowed, included in what was described as his extensive weekend reading. A second memo reached him in November 2014 with a cost estimate of €20 million for the diesel issue in North America, a gross underestimate of what was to come. The most damning meeting took place on July 27, 2015. Volkswagen engineer Oliver Schmidt presented slides explaining, according to prosecutor Benjamin Singer, in unmistakable terms that Volkswagen had been cheating, how they were cheating. One slide raised a single word as a question: indictment? An executive told Winterkorn on the phone that day, "We screwed the US authorities." The whistleblower. The whole thing might have continued indefinitely without one man's decision to break ranks. Stuart Johnson served as Volkswagen's US-based head of engineering and environmental office, and on or before August 19, 2015, he did something that violated direct orders from his superiors. He confessed the defeat device to the California Air Resources Board. CARB officials had grown suspicious, and one official later described how they caught it. "We tweaked the test in the lab to fool the car into thinking it was no longer in the lab, and that it was out in the open road. The emissions jumped." September 3, 2015, marked the day Volkswagen formally admitted the defeat devices to regulators. 15 days later, the EPA issued its first notice of violation covering about 482,000 2-liter vehicles, and 3 days after that, VW stock dropped 23% in a single day. Roughly €15.5 billion in market value vanished. Martin Winterkorn resigned on September 23, insisting he was not aware of any wrongdoing on my part. Audi's troubles were just beginning. November 2, 2015 brought the EPA's second notice of violation, this one specifically targeting 3-liter vehicles with Audi's own engine. These weren't Volkswagen engines put in Audis, because this was Audi's independent defeat device, covering about 85,000 vehicles that emitted up to 9 times the legal NOx limits. The destruction of evidence. After the scandal broke, something else happened that would later become part of the criminal case. Volkswagen's plea agreement and court filings reveal that as many as 40 employees of Volkswagen AG and Audi AG destroyed thousands of documents. A senior attorney's preservation notice was paradoxically interpreted by some employees as a hint to begin shredding. Daniel Donovan, a Volkswagen of America employee, filed a whistleblower lawsuit alleging he was fired on December 6, 2015, for refusing to participate in the evidence destruction and for planning to report the obstruction to federal authorities. Meanwhile, German authorities made another discovery. Audi was still producing and selling vehicles with defeat devices as late as 2017 and 2018, more than 2 full years after the US scandal broke. This specific conduct is what Audi's CEO would eventually be convicted for. The reckoning. 800 million euros. That's the fine Munich prosecutors imposed on Audi AG in October 2018, roughly $926 million. The amount included €795 million in disgorgement of illicit profits, plus a €5 million regulatory penalty, and Audi accepted the fine without appeal. Volkswagen Group pleaded guilty in January 2017 to 3 felony counts and paid $4.3 billion in criminal and civil penalties. The U.S. class action settlement for 2-liter vehicles reached $14.7 billion, covering about 475,000 Volkswagen and Audi vehicles. The settlement for 3-liter vehicles with Audi's engine came to $1.22 billion, covering roughly 83 to 88,000 vehicles. Total cost to Volkswagen Group as of 2025 exceeded 33 billion euros, roughly 36 to 37 billion dollars. The human reckoning took longer to arrive. Rupert Stadler had served as Audi's CEO since 2007, and Munich police arrested him on June 18, 2018, holding him for 4 months in pre-trial detention. His trial began on September 30, 2020, and he pleaded guilty to fraud by negligence on May 16, 2023. June 27, 2023, brought the conviction, a 21-month suspended sentence, meaning no actual prison time, plus a €1.1 million fine. Stadler also paid €4.1 million to Volkswagen in civil damages. When the Munich judge asked if a statement was correct that he neglected to inform business partners that cars with defeat devices were still on the market, Stadler's one-word reply was, yes. Wolfgang Hatz, the former head of engine development at Audi, received a 2-year suspended sentence and a €400,000 fine. Giovanni Pomio received a 21-month suspended sentence and a €50,000 fine. These became the first criminal convictions of Volkswagen board-level executives in Germany. The contrast. Something worth noting about justice is how unevenly it was applied in this case. Rupert Stadler served no prison time for overseeing a fraud involving thousands of vehicles over multiple years. Oliver Schmidt, who held a middle management position as Volkswagen's liaison to U.S. regulators, received 7 years in American prison. The judge who sentenced Schmidt said his job sometimes requires him to imprison good people just making very, very bad decisions. Martin Winterkorn, the man at the top of it all, was indicted in the US, but has never been extradited from Germany. His German trial began on September 3, 2024, but was suspended almost immediately due to health issues, and it was provisionally terminated in July 2025. At 78 years old, whether he will ever actually be tried remains uncertain. What he told the German parliament in January 2017 stands in direct contrast to the evidence. He claimed he had never even heard the phrase defeat device until the scandal erupted publicly. The DOJ indictment tells a different story. Where Audi stands today. Dieselgate litigation remains unresolved as of early 2026, which is remarkable given the scandal broke in 2015. A second Audi criminal trial involving 4 former executives is underway in Munich, covering 434,420 vehicles. Criminal proceedings against 31 other defendants remain open in Braunschweig. Volkswagen faces a new criminal trial in France beginning December 2026. The numbers tell the story of Audi's current state. Global sales in 2024 dropped nearly 12%, and sales in 2025 declined another 3%. Operating profit in the first half of 2025 fell 45% year-over-year. Operating margin has compressed from 9% in 2023 to 5.1% in 2025. The Brussels factory has closed, and 7,500 German jobs are being cut by 2029. BMW sold nearly 550,000 more cars than Audi in 2025. Audi has reversed its all-electric commitment, abandoning its 2021 pledge that all new models from 2026 would be EV only. CEO Gernot Döllner confirmed that internal combustion and plug-in hybrid vehicles will continue for another 7, 8, maybe 10 years. The connection. Dieselgate alone isn't responsible for Audi's current difficulties because Chinese competition, tariff exposure, and the challenges of EV transition timing all play a role. The connection remains real. CarScoops noted in May 2025, if Dieselgate hadn't happened, those $34 billion that were lost would have made Volkswagen a much stronger entity. The scandal accelerated the death of diesel in Europe, with market share falling from over 50% in 2014 to under 9% in 2025. It pushed Volkswagen and Audi toward an aggressive EV strategy they've now partially retreated from. It drained resources that could have funded earlier EV development and better market positioning. A decade of legal, financial, and reputational damage is what Audi is still working to overcome. A 2003 email from an Audi engineer joked that "carb won't notice." A 2008 email from another engineer stated, "We won't make it without a few dirty tricks." A $70,000 university study caught them in 2015. The CEO was convicted by 2023. $37 billion, and the company's lowest point came by 2025. The emails, the PowerPoints, the memos are all in the court records now. Audi didn't just participate in the biggest automotive fraud in history because they invented it. Repeated warnings to stop were ignored. Evidence was hidden, and when they finally got caught, they kept selling the cheating vehicles for another 2 years. That's not a collapse that came out of nowhere. That's a collapse that was predicted, documented, and deliberately concealed. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. I'll see you in the next one.